I want to start first by introducing Mr. Mejia, who is our translator, and Mr. Mejia is going to share how folks can access the Spanish translation. So, Mr. Mejia, you're on mute, Mr. Mejia.
Muy buenas noches a todos. Los que quieran traducción al español, por favor, al pie de sus pantallas van a encontrar el icono de un globo terrestre. Si ustedes lo aprietan y escogen la opción Spanish o español, van a poder escuchar esta conferencia en español. Muchas gracias. Si necesitan interpretación, por favor, activen sus micrófonos o pónganlo en la ventana del chat. Mr. Philip, it seems that nobody needs interpretation right now, but I'm going to stay here in case.
Thank you for staying for a while. I'm sure we'll have more people arriving, and we appreciate your help.
Of course, sir.
And if we do have other folks jump in, I'll ask you. I may ask you to repeat the directions later. Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay, so I'm Philip Lynch, the Director of Special Education for Montgomery County Public Schools, and I want to introduce or have my Associate Superintendent, Dr. Mason, introduce herself.
Good evening, everyone, all parents and staff. I'm Gwendolyn Mason, the Acting Associate for Special Ed. I'm glad to be a part of the SEAC meeting this evening.
And before we get into the agenda, I'd like to turn it over to my co-chairs, and I see Victoria is in. I know that Ms. Bloom will not be able to join us this evening. Victoria, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Phil. And I would like to welcome everybody. Thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you to all CPS staff and to the presenters tonight. I also would like to say that I am a parent of a child in special education, and she is at BE. I also would like to remind everybody that the co-chairs really want to help. And so if you have any questions or any concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can find our emails on the SEAC website. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. Victoria, are you aware of anybody this evening that has public comment?
I did receive an email of someone who wanted to testify, but they didn't send any, public.
If you could follow up with them, and
comments,
maybe follow up with them, and then we can see if we can fit them into our next agenda, that would be great. Okay. Before I get into the agenda, I want to introduce the presenters for this evening. It's not on the agenda, but we often do like to hear from our partners in Montgomery County, whether that be the rec department or the park and planning for Montgomery County. And this evening, we will be hearing, before we get into our primary portion of our agenda, we'll be hearing from Janine Blakely, who is here representing the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission. So Janine, you wanted to say hello first?
Yes, sure. Hi, so thanks so much for having me. As he said,
I'm sorry to interrupt. I don't want you to get into your presentation yet. I just want to introduce the presenters. Okay.
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I didn't mean to confuse you.
Jumped ahead.
I just want you to introduce yourself, and then we're also going to hear from our folks that support our social emotional learning for Montgomery County Public Schools students. And so Michelle Palmer, you want to wave, Michelle, and say hello? Okay. We're going to hear from Dr. Sandy Ives.
Hi, everybody. Nice to be here.
All right. And Dr. Ives, instructional specialist Lisa Corti is with her, and we may be hearing from her as well. So Lisa, I'm not sure if you want to wave. Okay, I see Lisa over there. All right, terrific. So the primary portion of our agenda is going to focus on that topic. I'll say a little bit about the format, and then we'll jump into the agenda. So a format that we have found that has been working well for us recently, and will continue to make improvements as we go along, has been to review the agenda, get into our presentation, and then as we go through the presentation, if folks have some questions that they would like to put in the chat, we're happy to take some breaks at some natural points, see if we can answer a few questions from the chat. But if you would like to hold your questions, we are going to follow the same format we did last time, where we're going to offer you an opportunity to jump into a breakout room. We're going to have 3 breakout rooms. We'll have a breakout room with our co-chair, and it looks like Victoria, you're the Lone Ranger this evening, so thank you. So you can, if you'd like to share any information with our co-chair this evening, you can join that breakout room. There'll be a breakout room for our presenters. So if you'd like to talk to Ms. Palmer or Dr. Ives or Ms. Cordy after the presentation and have more of a one-on-one not one-on-one, but a more in person or synchronous, or I'm struggling with the format, but a personal conversation with them about their presentation to get some more in-depth questions will be in that format. And then if you'd like to speak to me as a director about any topic, I'll be in another breakout room as well. Okay, so let's jump to the presentation. Mr. Derek Ritzenberg is assisting us with the presentation this evening. So presenters, if you're ready to move along with your slides, you can certainly just ask Derek to move to the next slide, and he will do so. All right, so first, let's go over the agenda. Try to get it in a format I can see it here. I know that it's really small there. So we've done our introductions. We're going to hear from the staff who are supporting students with social emotional learning. That is the bulk of our presentation. Actually, we're going to hear from Janine first. We'll fit her in, and she does have some lovely slides for us. And then we're going to, so we'll hear from her in terms of what's available for us in the Maryland National Park and Planning Commission. We'll hear then from our social emotional support staff, and then we're going to jump into our breakout rooms. All right. So, Janine, you're ready to take it away.
I'm ready. A nice job on the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission. That's the first test, is getting all those letters and acronyms right. So like you said, I'm Janine Blakely. I work for Montgomery Parks, different from Montgomery Recreation, who we know and love and are on this call with us, but we like to confuse the public and have both of us using the same registration software, and both of us being, well, no longer actually having program guides, but we are different entities. So we always like to clarify that, because that's the #1 question that we get when we go to fairs and talk with families is, how do I access the pools? And that is something that Recreation does. So what I'm here to tell you about today is to give you a little overview about what Parks offers and some of our amenities and programs, and tell you a little about where we're going. So if you can switch over to the next slide, that would be great. So this is our little tagline. It's all here. Within our park facilities, we have ice skating rinks, we have tennis centers, we have a driving range, we have fully accessible archery ranges, we have farms, we have several nature centers throughout the county, some of which are in the process of being renovated right now, which I'm sure you've seen if you frequently visit the nature centers. 2 of them are actually under construction right now, hoping to open in the late spring and early summer. And we also have historic sites within our agency as well. So places like Woodlawn Manor, where you see the horses and things like that. Next slide. So Montgomery Parks, we are committed to supporting individuals with disabilities in all of our programs. And we do that in several ways. And hopefully I touch on them throughout this whole presentation that I have. One of the things that's new since the last time I had an opportunity to speak with you in 2019 is that we've acquired adaptive equipment, which is we're really excited about and able to offer that for free to the public. Equipment includes things like an adaptive gardening chair and gardening tools. We also have an adaptive tripod to use at our archery ranges. We have adaptive fishing equipment. We have a variety of items that might be useful for you. So you can visit our website to see what we have and how to reserve those items if you are coming to one of our parks. This other thing that you'll see here is we have just recently given our park police sensory bags. So if they come across a child or an adult who is in distress, they can use the sensory bags to calm down. It's actually one of the first park police districts in the country that has implemented that. And then you also probably have seen in the news that we just installed some communication boards in many of we have several playgrounds that have been installed. They will be installed within the next month. And we have more to come, including one that is going to have Braille and American Sign Language on that board over at South Germantown Splash Park. So we're excited about those additions to our parks. Making the right choice. This is kind of our guide to inclusion services here in our office. We do provide services for any of our programs that we have in parks. So that includes sign language interpretation, adaptive equipment, some extra support staff, additional training for the staff that are on site, Braille and large print if needed. And so we have a pretty easy process to go through that. This flyer is a good one to give you that overview. And I noticed that it's going to be in this presentation will be available to everybody, and our website will be at the end where you can see it as well. I want to thank Connie for inviting us to this event specifically so we could talk about our Shine Brighter Together event. We have an autism acceptance event at the end of April 23rd. Our most exciting feature of this event is that we will be painting a community mural. So the mural was actually inspired by the ARC. They had an art contest. So that artwork was, there were winners from Montgomery County, and a young man with autism actually took those pieces of art and used it as inspiration to design a picture that would go on the wall. And so at our event, we'll actually have a chance to paint the wall on that day. We'll also have sensory friendly activities. We have accessibility in mind throughout, including an adaptive shuttle cart. We have a sign language interpreter, a sensory retreat tent. We also will have a social story on our website in the next couple weeks. And we thank all of our partners for being involved, including the ARC, Montgomery Recreation, and several others. Next slide. One of the new things that we're doing is, while all of our programs are inclusive in nature, we have set up some specialized programs that are designed specifically for individuals and kids with disabilities in mind. You can find this information on our website as well. We have a tree art hike this Saturday at Black Hill, if you're interested in that. Maydale Nature Center has sensory scavenger hunts. So I think there's some really exciting opportunities that are most accessible areas of our outdoor spaces. Next slide. New this summer is we have a new summer camp opportunity at Meadowside Nature Center, and that's the first week of summer and will be for kids ages 6 to 8 with disabilities. So we definitely hope you check that out. That is a brand new program. The naturalists over there are awesome, and I think it's going to be a really nice program. Next. I want you all also to know that we do keep physical accessibility in our parks in mind, and we recently added a new feature on our website where you can search for all of our parks and courts and playgrounds and shelters by their level of accessibility. So if you go to our accessibility page, you can actually you can search for that. So if that's something that you need when you're making a decision as to which park or playground to visit, that is available to you as well. And if you have any questions about that, please feel free to reach out and be in touch with us. And then last but not least is that Montgomery Parks is committed to hiring individuals of all ethnicities, race, gender identity, sexual orientation, and disability. So that also includes volunteer opportunities. If you have any young people or old people who are interested in volunteering with us, we do have a very robust volunteer program. We're always looking for volunteers in our programs. We're still looking for volunteers for our autism event in April. And we hope that you'll consider checking that out. So on the last slide here, and I'll drop all of our contact information into the chat here at the end, but that's where you can find us and give us a call at any time. You can email us, and our website has all of this information here. Victoria, I believe the minimum age for volunteering is, I would say, I think 14, but I think there's some things that you could do if you have a parent with you for volunteering. And yes, SSL hours are possible for events. So does anybody have any additional questions? I know I'm I went over my 5 minutes.
You're fine, Janine. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you. And I will, if it's all right, I will send you the flyer for the autism acceptance event. If you can share it with your resources, that would be great.
Thank you so much. We will certainly do that.
Thank you.
And so I did see in the chat that we had a parent who would like to present public comment. If you could keep it within 3 to 4 minutes, and please maintain the privacy of staff and students, that would be terrific. So let's see then up here.
It's me.
There's Kim, the Kim
Hello.
Petty. All right, thank you, Kim. All right, Kim, take it away.
So I've never been to one of these meetings. I've advocated for my son very loudly in our school, but this is a bigger picture that kind of triggered me today when I saw an announcement from the county, and also what I just saw with your autism awareness month. And I had to write it down because hang on, I'm just going to read something real quick. As an autistic person, I would like to provide a voice from the autistic community to petition against the usage of the term Autism Awareness Month and replace it with Autism Acceptance Month. This change aligns with the modern movement to accept autistic people and hear their voices. I would also like to help educate MCPS on the appropriateness of citing the Autism Speaks as an advocate or authority for the autistic community. This organization is considered controversial in the autistic community, and MCPS should be seeking guidance from more acceptable organizations, such as the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. So there's two things in that. First, I don't know if there are any autistic people in this group. I know there are a lot of parents who are going through a lot of hardships with their children and, trying to do what's best for them. As an autistic adult with an autistic child, I can see it from both things. I can see what happened to me and where I am, and I can see where he is. The problem with Autistic Awareness Month, you're just asking people to look. With the term Autistic Acceptance Month, you're asking them to actually put in some work, to learn what it's like to be autistic, to accept us, to accept our children, to understand them, to understand why maybe they're excited, flapping their hands, why maybe they're loud, why maybe the lights are bothering them or a large crowd is bothering them. My son is in a class, he's split between what's called an Asperger's class, which is also a very dated term, and a general education class. And I don't think the kids in the general education class even know why these kids are being brought in and out of his class, who they are, how to play with them. As a result, he gets bullied a lot by the neurotypical children. He's only friends with one other child who is not autistic, and that child has an autistic brother, so he probably, understands it. There's just a lack of education going on. And Autism Speaks is responsible for a lot of what gets filtered in because they're the big company that people know, but you aren't really educated on them. And they only give 1% of their funding to family services for autistic people. Awareness and lobbying is 48% of their budget. Their CEO was reportedly taking $600,000 a year. They refer to autism as an epidemic. They use funding to find a cure for autism when autism is a neurological disorder similar to ADHD. They treat autistic people like tragedies that befall their parents rather than actual human beings. 60 different mental health advocacy organizations have denounced Autism Speaks. They focus more on the parents and not actually autistic people. So the funding dries up after childhood. There is no funding given to the adults who also clearly still need help and support. Because most of the research is put into funding a biological indicator, the conversation has been more about how to prevent autism rather than how to make life easier and more accessible for autistic people. The board members represent major corporations, including current and former CEOs and senior executives of PayPal, Goldman Sachs, White Castle, FX Networks, eBay, Sirius, American Express. I have sources for everything here.
Ms.
So
Petty, thank you. We're going to need to get to our presentation,
Okay.
but thank you so much for sharing that information and for having the courage to provide us with the testimony. I'm going to put my, so if you could just email me the written portion that you have. If you want to, I know that you read from a portion. If you want to add a statement to that, that will be fine. Share that
Okay.
with me, and then we will share that feedback with with our folks in our autism unit. And again, thank you so much for sharing that testimony.
Okay, I'm a
There-
little overwhelmed by all the chat comments that just came in, but I'll try to figure out what they all mean. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kim. All right, so we're going to go ahead then with our presentation. And I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Palmer and take it away. And remember to tell Derek when you need to change slides there, Michelle.
Absolutely.
Mr. Lynch, let me ask if somebody would need my interpretation. Just
Certainly. And I also meant it, if you could say this in Spanish, Mr. Mejia.
yes,
I also meant
yes.
to say that if folks need the closed captioning there, they should click on the CC button at the bottom of the screen as well. Thank you.
Sí, por favor, si alguien necesita traducción al español, déjennoslo saber. Al pie de la pantalla hay un icono, una figura de un globo terrestre que ustedes pueden apretar para escuchar la traducción en español, pero primero queremos saber si necesitan o no. Pónganlo en la ventana del chat para poder empezar la traducción. Muchas gracias. También hay las letras de lo que se va diciendo al pie de la pantalla, en las letras S al pie de su pantalla.
All right, so my name is Michelle Palmer. I'm the coordinator for psychological services, and I'm going to be talking today about the social emotional learning supports that we provide in MCPS. I'll give a little background on that and then talk about the general education portion of things before I turn it over to Dr. Ives. And I'm waiting for the interpreter.
He's going to be providing interpretation in a separate room.
Sorry. All right. So then I will go ahead and keep moving. Thank you so much for moving to the next slide, Derek. I'm going to be talking about a couple of different things today. I want to frame the conversation about the supports that we provide in MCPS based on the multi-tiered systems of support, or MTSS. And then once I've given a little bit of background on what MTSS is, I will talk about the general education supports that we provide at tiers 1, 2, and 3. Next slide. So let's go over the tiered supports first. What is MTSS? Well, MTSS is a framework that helps educators provide both academic and behavioral strategies to students with varying kinds of needs. So MTSS grew out of something you may be familiar with, response to intervention, or RTI, and PBIS, or positive behavior intervention and supports. Both are things that MCPS has used to one degree or another in over the years. But right now we are talking about it in terms of MTSS. And we're really looking at making sure that we do not wait to fail or wait to have our students fail before we put something in place for them. So this is a very proactive approach, and it is for both academic and behavioral needs. Now, we're only talking about social emotional supports today, but it is important to keep that in mind. So for a lot of the things that we do with MTSS, there's universal screeners, we start with the basics or tier 1 where everyone gets support, and we gradually increase what students get or based on whatever their need is, and that they're not responding to what we put in place before then, which is that connection to RTI. Next slide. So what are our tiers? I said that this is a tiered or a multi-tiered system of support. So there are 3 tiers, and you can see on this slide that there are tiers that everyone gets. There are tiers that only some folks get, and then there is this intensive level at the top of our triangle that really focuses on a level of intensity that is for just a few kids. Granted, MCPS is a very large school system, so our few is different than a smaller school system. But the idea here, and you can even see on this particular slide, that we have lots of things that we put in place for everyone, and we gradually get to fewer and fewer things that are really just for either some of our students who need something more than what everyone gets, and then even more than that, something that's more intensive that just a few folks receive. So we can move to the next slide. So let's talk about tier 1. That's supports that everybody in MCPS get, okay? And these are supports when we talk about things that students as well as families may receive. Stay on the slide you're on now, Derek, please. So the first thing I want to talk about is our Be Well 365 framework. And the idea behind this is that we have a number of social, psychological, and physical interventions that are for all students, regardless of what school they're in, what level in school they're in, et cetera. And we want these to be available for students and families so that we can be proactive in the things that we do for them. The Be Well 365 initiative comes out of the office that I'm in, which is the Office of Student and Family Support and Engagement, but we collaborate with offices across the county, across MCPS, as well as with some of our outside agencies, so that we can make sure that our students are getting their needs met in a manner that doesn't rely on them having to have a problem before they get some kind of support. We want to build resiliency and coping mechanisms in our students, but we also want to make sure that we provide supports for families out there. And so when we talk, or when I talk later about our parent community coordinators, our pupil personnel workers, et cetera, there are things available to families to support their children, not just what we provide for the students themselves. Next slide. So some of the things that we do with Be Well 365, I've provided links on this slide, and I did see in the chat that this would be on the SEAC website later, so you'll be able to access these links. But we have a lot of different things that everybody, no matter what school they're in, can access. A couple of things that I want to focus on to give that you all can access. In addition to being able to go to the website and seek the social emotional supports and links that we have there, we have Waymaking, which is a series that was started during the shutdown, the pandemic shutdown, basically to provide information for students and information for families on things that were available to them. That whole idea of, we need to get through this, and here are some things that maybe you don't know about that would help you move forward with your helping your children as you're locked down and things like that. And we've continued that. In fact, there will be new episodes coming up later, either this spring or into the summer. And Dr. Christina, formerly Connolly, now Chester, she's gotten married, is the moderator of these Waymaking series that you can find on YouTube, and you can go back all the way to the beginning if you like. We also have something for our students and families around mental health. We have a mental health awareness week that happens in the fall, October, November timeframe. And the link that you find there, you'll see videos on how to help your students cope or help your children cope. You can find videos for students on how to build up their social skills and how to handle tough situations with friends and things like that. So we are really trying to gear things so that our community has resources available to them that they can utilize and from a mental health or social emotional learning standpoint. A couple of other things you'll see on here: restorative justice is part of the Be Well 365 framework, and part of what we do with the restorative justice unit, which is also under the SFSE umbrella office, is basically trying to build in better well-being skills, self-care, conflict resolution, things that help build community so that students, when there is some kind of conflict that may have occurred, this is an opportunity. The community circles is one of the big things that they do through the restorative justice unit to try to build back that sense of community if there's been a breakdown. Mindfulness is also something that is done through the restorative justice unit. And I encourage you guys to go to the website, because you have, these are things that are within schools that you can help your children access. The last thing on here is SUPRE. And SUPRE stands for the Substance Abuse Prevention and Resilience Education. And the reason I highlight it here is twofold. One is that it is a relatively new program that we're using in MCPS, but also we know that there are students with social emotional needs who also may engage in uses of substances. And sometimes it's because of their mental health issues that they've engage in the substance use. This is an opportunity to provide psychoeducation around substance abuse, as well as help high school students. It is targeted to high school students get back on track. And so I put that in here just because there can sometimes be a connection between those who have mental health issues and those who have substance abuse issues. Next slide, please. Now, what I'm going to talk about on this slide are the more traditional social emotional interventions that you all are probably familiar with. And those are your social emotional learning lessons that maybe you're familiar with what a counselor doing in class, or in the more recent ones that we've done here, we've set up so that the classroom teachers could do, we put them in Canvas, which is one of our online learning platforms in MCPS. And those were created during the shutdown because there needed to be something for students and something for teachers to give to students so that the students' well-being was looked after. We weren't in school anymore. There wasn't a place where a student could ask for a hall pass to go see the counselor or see the psychologist. And so we put these together to try to promote coping skills and resiliency and how to handle this crazy place we found ourselves in, being locked down, and the fear and the anxiety that went along with that. So those lessons still exist, and there's great value to them as we continue to work our way through COVID-19. But I also want to highlight some other things that we have as a system now, because we have found, first of all, that there's great benefit to some of the online resources out there. And one of them is Harmony Inspire. It's associated with the Sanford Harmony social emotional learning curriculum that existed, but Sanford Inspire is a pre-K through 6 program. It's accessible online, and so some schools are using Harmony Inspire. Nearpod is something that MCPS purchased that provide lessons for teachers to give to their students. The lessons are pretty brief, from anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes in length, and they're designed to provide skills coping skills, lessons to be learned that then conversations in the classroom can be had between the teacher and the students. And in fact, these things can happen if you're at the elementary level for a, as part of a morning lesson. At the secondary level, it can happen in advisory. There was a question that came up in the chat that was on the screen and now is off. So I'm going to find that for a minute to see if I can answer that. Do I know how often these resources on Canvas are being accessed? I actually don't have that data. That might be something that OTI, Office of Technology and Innovation, might be able to answer. I don't have that, but we can hold that question and come up with it or look for the data. I don't know how often they're being accessed. So Harmony Inspire, Nearpod. Now the two that I've just talked about are online, right? But we do also have your traditional in-person lessons that can happen. And Second Step is one of the gold standard curriculums that some schools use. It's based on the CASTLE model, Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And so I know that our pre-K programs use that with great regularity, but I also know that schools around the county have used Second Step, and these lessons do go up through grade 12. The last one that I want to bring to your attention that you may or may not be familiar with, it used to be called Teaching Tolerance. It's now called Learning for Justice. And there are ready to use classroom lessons. There is a focus on social justice, but also on social emotional learning related to that. And so everything on the screen here, you have a link to, and you can check out, but these are interventions that are available to schools, not necessarily required. I think that Ms. Valini Merchant, that's a great question, how much they're being used. And I simply don't know the answer to that. Is there training for teachers to know? And what kinds of social emotional lessons are being provided at MC at the various levels? So let me go into the next things that are required, but I don't have the answer of what they are doing. Yes, and we can field some of the questions in the breakout room. So how much they are using them versus not using them. That's not data I have today, but that is something that we can look into for you. Next slide, please. So there are 3 different programs that all MCPS schools, depending on the level and the program, are required to implement. The first one is the Leader in Me curriculum. Now, we just began rolling this out this year. So there's a 3-year rollout plan. So not every school, 100% of the schools are using it right now, but within the next 3 years, it will be rolled out in all 3. I'm lost in my words. All schools will roll it out within the next 3 years. Now, the Leader in Me was chosen after an extensive look at the various curricula that were out there to support social skills and learning, proactive, lifelong skills to be successful both in school, college, and career. And right now we have 80 schools in the first cohort. The second cohort will have 60 to 70 schools, and then the remainder will be in cohort 3, which will be FY24. So schools get trained over the summer, they start implementing, and there are check-ins and coaches to help them with implementing that go along the way. The second required program is the SOS, Signs of Suicide Prevention program. Now, this is only done at the secondary level, though we are very much hoping that the company that makes SOS, the company is called Mindwise, that they are working on something more appropriate for elementary, and that something will come out there. But this is the 4th year that we've been implementing SOS. We implement in all of our middle and elementary schools. It's an evidence-based program. And we basically want our students, and you can see on the screen, we have the ACT acronym. We want them to acknowledge that either themselves or someone else that they know are having perhaps feelings of depression or suicidal thoughts. We want them to make sure that whether it's them or whether it's someone else, that the person knows that they're cared for. And then we want them to tell a trusted adult so that they can get help. The goal of SOS is not for our students themselves to try to be the help, because that's not appropriate. It is how to get help, and whether it's getting help for yourself or getting help for a friend. That is what we're trying to do with SOS, with the Signs of Suicide program. Now, the last thing on here is the personal body safety lessons that came out of school counseling, but these are done actually pre-K through 12. There's an error on the slide. I apologize for that. And at developmentally appropriate levels for the students to talk about the things that might put them at risk and make them vulnerable for being taken advantage of. So the lessons were developed with input from national stakeholders and county partners. And basically the idea is to empower our students to recognize when there might be a situation where they would suspect either to be a victim of, or that somebody else is a victim of abuse, without there being a fear of some kind of reprisal for that. Next slide, please. All right, the last of my Tier 1 interventions here are geared to our students in terms of the Our Minds Matter Club, which Our Minds Matter is a nonprofit organization that we partner with. Their primary goal is that the day when no teen dies by suicide. Okay, it is a student-run club, mostly at the high school level. We do have a couple middle schools that are piloting Our Minds Matter at the middle school level. But the students work on focusing on developing protective factors in students, things like seeking help, being socially connected, having healthy habits and the like, so that they do it for themselves and for their friends, etc. So there are 17 high schools. I cannot at the moment, I can get a list to you of which schools have that, but 17 high schools, 2 middle schools. But it's growing. New clubs come up every year, and you can go to the website. The link is on the slide. The other one is the Parent Academy, and I bring that to your attention as many of you are parents. And the Parent Academy, which has had in-person things as well as virtual, in fact, their Parent Academy to go virtual workshops have been big hits, and they have topics on lots of different things: social emotional well-being and mental health supports, tips for virtual learning success, which thankfully we're all back in person, or the majority of us are, and that's not necessarily something that is as needed as it was a time or two ago, but things around social emotional well-being and so forth, how to navigate MCPS, because that's a challenge for everyone. So I bring these to your attention because these are things not just for students, but for you all as well. Next slide, please. So moving on to Tier 2, and if Tier 1 was for everybody, Tier 2 is the supports that are available for some of our students. Not everyone needs Tier 2. It's the next level of support that we provide. Next slide. So when we're talking about Tier 2, the first thing I'll bring to your attention, and this was an outgrowth of the closures that we had and the virtual learning that we had to do, we were having a difficult time getting our students to log on and to be engaged. And the out of the pupil personnel service and attendance services unit came these student well-being teams, which were a group of folks at each school, and it would vary by school depending on the size of the school and the nature of the needs and so forth. But they were looking into attendance and student engagement and the social emotional needs and honestly any kind of resources that the families might need. This was an opportunity to have a conversation as a school team, the student well-being team, and then reach out to families to see what the needs were. And they saw great improvement during virtual learning with attendance and engagement, which is also why now that some of that may still be a need, it's grown into some of the social emotional supports that might be of use to a team trying to support students. They do something referred to as root cause analysis and then develop or provide interventions based on whatever the cause is, so that we make sure that we are attacking the problem that exists, the difficulty that a student may be having or that a family may be having, and try to get the supports there that are needed. Sometimes those interventions are things that the school can provide, and sometimes it's something connecting to an outside agency or to an outside group that can support the family or the student. Other tier 2 interventions that we have are group counseling. And that can be from your counselors or your psychologists and hopefully eventually your social workers. We are hiring social workers in to do some work with students through the SFSE office. But this is stuff that counselors and psychologists do, and it can be for any number of reasons. It could be for behavioral support. It could be because someone is struggling with some anxiety. It could be for, a parent may be a family may be going through a divorce, and there's some things going on that maybe talking with your counselor, your psychologist might be helpful for. But this is group counseling. Tier 2 is more looking at things from a group standpoint. It's not as intensive as what you would need at the tier 1 or tier 3, excuse me, which I'll get to in a moment. But you're working in groups. Now that's internal. We also have external partners like Caring Matters, who they come into schools and have groups for kids. We partner with other agencies. Every Mind is another one, to provide referrals and so forth. That can happen at this level if we think students would benefit from groups. Typically, this is short-term work, though. This is not long-term, short-term, 6-8 weeks, 12 weeks, that sort of thing. And then the last tier 2 intervention I would put in here is something referred to as check-in and check-out. And the gist of this program is that a student might be paired with an adult that they trust in the building, someone that can serve in sort of a mentoring role. And that person, based on the goals for whatever the student wants to work on and what some of the areas of need are for that student, the adult that is paired with them checks in with them in the morning to see what their goals are for the day and checks out with them at the end of the day to see how did things go, what went well, what did not go well. And as a student does better with that, those goals change to meet the needs of the student based on how their performance has gone. Next slide, please. So now let's talk about tier 3 supports. These are the kids who have the greatest need. And again, we're still just talking about general education supports. The greatest need, this is the top of the triangle, so the fewest number of kids tend to need these kinds of supports. Next slide. From a general education standpoint, we have partnerships. We have individual counseling that can be done, of course, by your school counselor, your psychologist, and eventually, hopefully, the social workers that are being hired literally as we speak. But we also have outside providers. Some of your schools have linkages to learning at your schools, and this is a community partnership. It's with MCPS, Health and Human Services, as well as some private nonprofit agencies. But we've had linkages to learning sites for over 25 years. Right now, they're in 29 schools. Some schools also have, some of the linkages sites also have school-based health centers. There are 9 of those in the county, but referrals come from within the school. They can also come from families to linkages for the supports. And some of the supports are the counseling, or at that point, they may be referring to it as therapy. But there's also social services kinds of support, case management kind of support that linkages can provide to folks. The other partner I want to bring to mind is pretty new for us. We started a partnership with JESA, Jewish Social Services Agency, about a year ago. We just had sort of our 1-year anniversary of having completed the process of developing the MOU with them and memorandum of understanding. But JESA Minecraft, JESA provides a full range of services to the schools that we have put them in, assigned them in. We looked at the parts of the county that had mental health deserts, which, you know, there just wasn't a lot around for the community associated with the school. And so this was an opportunity for MCPS to partner with JESA, which is one of our wonderful partner agencies in Montgomery County, to provide that mental health support to students. And their Mindcraft program is what is in, we started with 10 schools. That was our original proposal and pilot. And I'm very happy to say that within this first year, we've grown, well, the website says 17. I counted, last count that I had, I thought it was like 22. And this has been fantastic. They're providing mental health support to students. They're doing it in person and virtual. And we very much hope to expand this particular partnership because it's really, students are finding benefit, families are finding benefit. We're very, very pleased with the way in which this has worked for our students and the communities that the schools are in. Now, we partner with DHHS and other agencies for linkages, and we're partnering with JESA for Minecraft. There are, at some point, we exhaust those abilities to provide supports. And so there are, at the tier 3 level, sometimes we're referring to outside community partners in order to come up with the supports that a student might need, or that a family might need, perhaps thinking about wraparound supports. So maybe there's family therapy as well as the student needing some kind of therapy. And we need to refer to an outside agency to get that kind of wraparound support. So that is the end of my presentation on the general education supports going through from a tier 1 all the way to a tier 3. What I would want to do at this point is hand it over to Dr. Sandy Ives so she can talk about it from a special ed standpoint.
But before we turn it over to Dr.
Sure.
Ives, I just want to emphasize one thing because Michelle spoke about the services and the supports that she described as general education supports, and that simply means that they're available to all students.
Yes.
That doesn't mean they would exclude any students or exclude special education students. So special education students would be able to avail themselves of all the services and all the supports that that Michelle described. And it simply means that they're not exclusive to students with disabilities. I also wanted to just, if you have a moment, Michelle, maybe touch on one or two questions from the chat. There was a question about asking about training for teachers to advocate for these services. I know we all go through, and I'm speaking of as an MCPS staff member, training at the beginning of each school year that we are required to take. So I don't know if you want to speak to say anything about the type of training that we as staff members are exposed to or have available to us.
So I think the question is, what are teachers given in terms of understanding what these supports are and resources are. And so that's a great question, actually. And I don't know that we necessarily have a for the entire county, this is what's available at each of the schools. I know that schools individually talk about what's available at the school and how to make referrals and things, but it does lend itself to a, shouldn't we put something together that at the beginning of each year that describes this is what's available and out there for folks. So teachers and other school staff would have that information. So I will make note of that, and because I think that that's a very good question. If I don't know the answer to that, it probably means that there isn't a whole county training to let teachers know that.
Thank you, Michelle. And
You're welcome.
folks will also have an opportunity. I see some other questions that may be specific to her expertise. They can ask some follow-up questions when we get into the breakout rooms. All right, Dr. Ives, you want to take it away?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Sandy Ives. I apologize. I didn't change my name here. I'm the same person, just not Posner anymore. Next slide. So today I'm hoping to share with you information about social emotional special education services and bridge services. And these are all programs that are at that top of that triangle, the most intensive Tier 3 supports. And I'm also going to share information about the consult process for students exhibiting significant social, emotional, and behavioral challenges at the elementary, middle, and high schools. Next slide. I just love this quote and I live by it. Every child needs at least one adult who is irrationally crazy about him or her. And I just think it just speaks to the importance of those relationships. And that is what we really focus on, is developing those relationships with our kids, finding their strengths, making them feel so good about themselves and helping them see that they can do it. And that is really, really important. If you don't have that, then whatever strategies you put in place aren't really going to work. Next slide. So who do we serve in social emotional special education? We have 25 programs, and the students we're serving all have IEPs. We are special education, fully special education program, and they qualify for our services because the primary reason they're having trouble learning is social, emotional, and behavioral. There may be some other learning needs with some of our students, but for the most part, they're on or above grade level. They're cognitively very competent and able to do the work. They just have, frustration tolerance issues. They don't have coping strategies that work for them that are appropriate. They might have organizational challenges, social skills, establishing relationships with peers, all kinds of different things that we're working on that will be present in those goals and objectives. It is important to know that in our program, in all special ed programs, the code does not drive services and placement. So we do have students, clearly many of them with emotional disabilities, but some of them have multiple disabilities or other disability codes as well. Next slide. So what do we believe? I highlighted in yellow some of the key words here. We're a psychoeducational program. We are working with a team of mental health professionals that are working with special educators and general educators to implement a restorative, reclaiming environment that is flexible and consistent and builds relationships with students, parents, and guardians. We have a strong focus on student strengths. Many of our students come to us not feeling too good about themselves. They don't hear about their strengths. They really are just focused on those deficits, and it's really hard. So we need to bring out those strengths and help our kids learn to use those strengths in order to cope and learn in the classroom. And of course, LRE. We are always striving to get our kids back in general ed with the supports they need, but we want them to be ready with those emotional skills so they can become productive members of the classroom and society. This chart just gives a nice, clear picture of what we believe. And if you look on the left, we're looking at a restorative climate, and you can see the difference in the words that are used in a restorative climate versus a coercive climate. And just a little thing you might be able to try at home. If you look at the middle of restorative climates, you see tend to emotional needs, and you see trust, respect, understanding, and empowerment, which is the acronym TRUE. And we use this a lot in helping staff when they're problem solving with kids so that they're not doing the things that are on the right. Okay, you have a problem, you get into a power struggle, you might be blaming the student and the student gets mad at you, and it just doesn't really work to help kids change. So if you trust and you show respect and you really listen to the student or your child, and you help them to figure out ways to solve the problem so you can empower them for the next time. It's just a good little thing to remember. And it really does work. It takes time, but it really does work if you use it. And then the bottom about growth needs. We all human beings have a need to belong, have a sense of mastery, independence, and generosity. What we find with our students, and this is from the Circle of Courage work out of Reclaiming Youth, is that a lot of our students come with broken circles. So they don't have that belonging, they don't have that mastery, they don't have independence, and generosity isn't there because they're missing so many of these prerequisites. So we're really working on helping our students become a part of their school and, part of the student body. We work a lot on making sure these things are present, as opposed to blocking those growth needs, which is on the right, which we don't want to be doing. Next slide. So this is us. Ms. Cordy and I supervise these 25 programs, and we have two different types of programs. We have social emotional special ed services, K through 12. And also under that umbrella, we have bridge services, which are our services in three middle schools and 3 high schools for students with significant mental health issues as well. And we provide consultations to school staff, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Next slide. This just gives you a visual of our services and the kinds of things we're doing. And I just want to continually, focus on that tier 3. So this is the kind of work we're doing in a tier 3 world. We're putting a lot of things in place. We have small self-contained classroom instruction. We have in the social piece, we're working on conflict resolution, all kinds of social opportunities. Not everything is listed here, but these are some of the things we're working on. And then we're constantly gathering data and doing progress monitoring so we can evaluate, are these things working? Is the counseling, the crisis intervention, risk assessment, all these additional pieces that we're doing, providing enough support for our students so they grow in the classroom and are able to move back into general education. It is an interdisciplinary approach. We have, next slide, I'll show you the staff we have. So we have special educators, paraeducators. All of our elementary schools have a full-time behavior support teacher. Our middle and high schools have secondary program specialists. We have psychologists on a consult basis in most of our programs, and we have a full-time social worker in each of our SES sites. Next slide. So this is just an example. These are our 6 instructional intervention components. This is what all of our programs are focusing on across the county. We try to have consistency across the system with our programs so that we have a similar way that we are doing things. Even though each school is different and has its own climate and life, these are the pieces that must be in place in order for us to serve our students. Next slide. And then I wanted to just make sure I shared some alignment with you just with regard to, Michelle talked about Be Well 365. And we have this in our handbook actually, and it shows kind of the different things we do under each of these pieces. So, you know, just as one example, mental health and emotional support, we are doing a ton of insight-based counseling. All of our students have counseling on their IEPs. Some of them get group counseling, some of them get group and individual. Groups can be created based on needs as they're coming up, and also just working on, for example, at our elementary levels, working on emotional regulation through the zones of regulation. All of our elementary programs have zones groups every week, and all the teachers are integrating the zones language into the school day and into everything. So the kids are really internalizing what they're learning and applying it in situations as they arise. Next slide. I just wanted to share just one chart with our programs. Nothing I really say here, you can look at your leisure, but these are where our programs are currently located. We are opening a new elementary program next year. It's called Jones Lane. I did include it. So we will have 8 elementary programs next year. Next slide. So the consult process. We, out of our office, are available to provide social, emotional, behavioral consultative services to staff in schools. These are not consultations for children. It is for staff so that we can send some expertise out to the school, get a feel for what's happening with the student, and see what plans that the school is using, and try to provide additional strategies, help the teacher build capacity, increase their toolbox, try some different strategies to support a student that they might not think of. Students are required to have a functional behavioral assessment and a behavior intervention plan. And part of the consult process with our unit is to look at that and to give feedback to the team about what they are thinking and if there's anything else we can support them with. Next slide. In our unit, the behavior support teachers and Lisa and I sometimes also are doing these consults. And, you know, it's really to help increase student access to curriculum. That's the bottom line. It's about helping kids have behavioral strategies so they can be present in the classroom and learning and doing. I'll answer that question, Stephanie. I do see it in 1 second. To the curriculum and to address barriers to instruction due to behavior and/or emotional needs. I don't know if I have one more thing there. I think that's the last one. Okay. So what does a consultation look like? Well, we review the student's functional behavioral assessment. We might do a phone conference with identified school staff. A student observation may or may not be a part of it. It usually is, but sometimes we are able to provide staff with some good strategies by phone that they can give a try and then get back to us if they need more intensive consultation. In-person meeting with school staff. And we do provide some written feedbacks, considerations, and recommendations. And then, you know, we do try to follow up with the staff at the schools to see how things are going and check in with them about the consult. And I think that was my last slide. There was a question in the chat.
Yeah, Sandy, you had yeah, just 1 or 2
Yes,
questions in there that you could get. And again, if folks want to speak directly with Sandy about any specifics, then you can jump into the to that breakout room. But go ahead, Sandy.
I just wanted to answer that one question. The social emotional special ed services enhanced programs at 2 high schools. This is actually fairly new for us within the last, I guess, 5 or 6 years now. I'm losing track of time, but these programs were created for students that have significant anxiety and school phobia. These are kids that just haven't been able to go to school because of significant mental health issues of the anxiety type and depression and that more kind of internalizing issues going on. And these high school programs have more staffing, and they have like a separate suite where our students can stay all day if they need 100% of the day in a self-contained environment.
Thank you, Sandy. At the last meeting, I shared that we would be reporting out our data for our compensatory recovery services, and I said that I would give you an update. So Derek, if you could go to the next slide, we'll talk for a minute about that. So this is just a brief update regarding some of the data that we've gathered and reported on for the discussions regarding compensatory recovery services. These would be the discussions that would be taking place for students who were impacted during the shift to virtual learning during the pandemic as a result of the pandemic. And so you see there in that first bullet that we have a total of 585 students who are eligible for special education services in Montgomery County Public Schools during that time period. We have had 17,188 conversations as of that reporting date. I'm sure that number has already changed. So that was as of the March 15th reporting date. I know that schools are reporting back to us additional conversations that have been had, and we are tracking every single student in Montgomery County to make sure that every student has that conversation and that eligibility discussion with their teams. We are in contact with schools who need to continue to have those discussions to ensure that all students have that eligibility conversation. That number represents roughly 83.5% of our students with disabilities in Montgomery County, and that work is still ongoing. You can see there in the final bullet that up to this point, 5,387 students have been determined eligible. And as I said, those conversations are continuing. So that's the update in terms of the compensatory recovery services data that we have for you. And we have those services being provided in an ongoing manner, after school opportunities at local schools, as well as those regional sites that I referenced in my updates at our last meeting at regional schools on weekends. We have coordinators who are helping to schedule those services for students, and we're connecting families with providers when those services cannot be met at the local school. We are also looking at what opportunities we'll be able to provide this summer, and we will continue to provide services throughout the summer at our regional sites. So that's my update on the compensatory recovery services data. If we could then move on to the next slide, I think that's announcement about our MSDE parent involvement survey. And so this is an annual survey that the state of Maryland puts out. Most of you are very familiar with it, and you're also familiar with our efforts to try to make sure that we get feedback from you through this survey. When you do complete the survey, the information is put together by the state of Maryland and is provided to us in a comprehensive manner. We get the feedback directly from the state. And so it's very helpful for us if you were able to complete this survey. And so the link will be there, and we will include it in the presentation when we share it online. It's also available on our website, and each parent in Montgomery County with a student with a disability is also provided information directly to them in the mail from the state, from MSDE as well regarding this survey. So there are multiple ways to access it. Mary Rose, I see your face there. Do you want to say anything about the survey? I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Mary Rose.
Oh, that's fine. Just that the surveys were mailed by MSDE this week. There are two separate surveys, one for preschool age students, so age 3 to kindergarten, and then a second one from kindergarten to 21. And you can either mail it back, or you can access the link that will be in your packet from MSDE or the various places that, we will post it as well. But we really, really would appreciate it if you would complete it. We do review all the information from it. And, we look to provide different parent workshops and things, and to change, some things based on the feedback that we get. So we really appreciate it if you could take a few minutes to complete it. Oh, and it is anonymous. So that's, another thing, just another piece of information.
Thank you for that promotion. All right, so at this point, and Derek, I'm not sure if you're able to come off mute and share with us the directions that you want to provide for the breakout rooms. As we mentioned, there's a breakout room for our presenters. There's one for our SEAC co-chairs, and then I will be in a breakout as well.
Yep, so just in 1 second, the breakout rooms will open up and you have 3 choices. You have chat with the co-chairs. That's the first room. Second room is meet with the director. And the third room is social emotional supports. So you can choose whichever room you'd like to participate in, and you can also get out of a room and join another.
All right, thank you, Derek.
Eric, do you put us in the rooms or do we?
Nope, you can join the rooms as
we
soon as
can
we
do this
start.
too. Okay.
Yep, and if you have any trouble, just let us know and we can also assign you to a room.
I'm sorry, what was my room again? I forgot the number. 4?
Number 3.
Number
It'll
3.
be, the title will be obvious. The
All right,
title will be
okay.
clear. Don't be nervous.
So at this time, you should see the option to choose a room. And there's 3 different rooms there, and just let us know if you have any problems.